it is a late night video from me, but one that I have not been able to stop thinking about. I've had two different topics on my mind for the last couple of days, and so I'm going to be filming some late night videos. They will probably come out at my normal time, but you're going to see me with my newly influenced hydro jug. Oh my gosh, you guys. I'm not going to influence you to buy anything, but this thing totally goes flat, and then watch this. Ready? It's leak proof. Take that, Stanley Cup. Okay, I'm not trying to convince you to buy anything. I was influenced to buy that and I am loving it. But I do want to talk about curriculum and our curriculum choices because we are in the thick of curriculum choice season. And I have some thoughts and I want to open a conversation. I'm going to be filming another video in which I talk about my own thoughts on creating my own curriculum. But today I want to talk about curriculum accuracy and peer review. So I, like you, have been watching everybody's potential choices. Those of you who are brainstorming, those of you who totally have it locked in for next year, I have been eating up all those delicious homeschool curriculum choice videos. And I've been introduced to some new companies that I've never heard of before and that I think are pretty new on the market, maybe 2 to 3 years old. And that has got me asking some hard questions, which is who's writing this curriculum and how do we know it's accurate? Do they have peer reviews? Has it been used by anybody other than the creator's children? And I've been on some websites and I am not impressed with what I've found. Now, let me set the stage here really quickly. The first thing is to say that those of you who don't know me, hi, my name is Brecky and I used to be a professor. That's right. I was a lecturer in the college setting. I worked with college students. My husband was a tenured professor in religion, philosophy, and ethics. I was a religion and theology professor and I taught. I wrote my own curriculum for the college level community. I taught it. I taught different subjects and I taught in different states. So I have a background in teaching collegiate level academics, and teaching early education is a totally different kettle of fish, but I know what goes into creating curriculum. I also know that all the new curriculum that I created that wasn't just curriculum that was created by a tenured professor had to be approved by a tenured professor. All the stuff that I was doing, the textbook that I wanted to use, had to be approved by my department chair. Now, I also know how textbooks come to be, right? Both collegiate textbooks and also public school, K-12 textbooks. They go through a rigorous process in which they're written by usually a whole team of content area experts. They have to be reviewed by content area experts. They're edited by professional editors, and then they are shipped out for schools to use. That doesn't mean that there isn't bias. That doesn't mean there isn't worldview issues. That doesn't mean that there aren't prejudices that are in the text. But it does mean that for the most part, the factual parts of text are accurate because they've gone through a pretty rigorous process that we call peer review, in which content area experts are checking each other's work to hopefully make sure that we are correct in the presentation of the information that we're giving. For example, it is a fact that in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, right? But what if you were writing curriculum and you accidentally remembered it wrong and you said in 1493, Columbus sailed the deep blue sea? It's really easy to make that mistake, especially with a mnemonic device. A peer review means that a content area expert would see that little rhyme, recognize that you had it incorrect, and would basically call you out and say, this needs to be changed. 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue is a fact. It's not something we can negotiate. You can argue whether or not that was a good thing, a bad thing, if he was a hero or a villain or somewhere in between. Those are opinions, those are worldview pieces. But the fact that Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492 is a non-negotiable fact, right? It's a non-negotiable fact. And so peer review plays this role in ensuring that both honest mistakes and inaccuracies are caught, right? Like an editor would catch stray commas or run-on sentences. But it also serves to ensure that the way that information is presented is genuine, right? There's no disingenuous mangling of facts in order to create an argument that isn't a reasonable argument one can make. Now, I don't think you would get too much of that in the homeschool curriculum community. So peer review would act as kind of a safeguard to make sure honest mistakes of inaccuracy are caught. Now, I decided to do a little digging to see who has peer review in place. And I've looked at The Good and the Beautiful because it's one of the fastest growing, if not one of the largest homeschool curriculums out there. I looked at Story of the World because I like Susan Wise Bauer as a kind of social commentator and as a researcher and a writer. She has a PhD and several master's degrees. And I've been looking at Bookshark, because Bookshark is the secular sisters company of Sunlight, and they probably go through a similar process since the vast majority of their material is actually the same. So here's what I found. As far as I can tell from what is presented on the Story of the World website, on the Well-Trained Mind Press, they do mention that multiple people with advanced degrees, including Susan Weisbauer herself, are writing and reviewing the content, but there is nothing about a peer review process. They are, however, an accredited academy. So the online academy through Well-Trained Mind is accredited through the Middle States Association Commission on Elementary and Secondary Schools. And their core courses are approved by the National Collegiate Athletic Association, so the NCAA. So they do have an approval process for their online courses, and my assumption then is there is some peer review process that goes on for like the Story of the World volumes. And I haven't been able to read everything on the new revised versions, but my guess based on this is that there is an outside reviewer ensuring that the changes are accurate, and that they probably came in and were seeing where there were inaccuracies or poorly reflected areas that could be beefed up. That is what I'm finding. The problem is that the Well-Trained Mind Press doesn't have an explicit page on their review process, and if they use a peer review process, and who they're using in peer review, which is a little bit of a problem. So then I looked at The Good and the Beautiful. Who's writing The Good and the Beautiful, and can I trust that they are writing accurate information? Well, Jenny Phillips is the founder of The Good and the Beautiful. She has an English bachelor's, and that's all I could find. Now, granted, I did a cursory look. This isn't a deep dive. I didn't spend hours on this, and I haven't sent any emails, but there's no about the writers. There's no about the review process. There's nothing in the curriculum. I'm looking down at my website, at my computer right in front of me. There's nothing on the website about who's writing the curriculum and why we should trust them. There's nothing about content area experts. And that makes me a little anxious. For example, I'm currently looking at the brand new re-released history course from The Good and the Beautiful. They have a 4-year history cycle and a whole bunch of readers that are written for The Good and the Beautiful. And not once do they tell you who is doing the writing. Not once do they tell you who they consulted. It says that it has a Christian worldview. And it has things about not being a part of any particular Christian church, high moral character, based on biblical principles. They have reviewers and users of the Lutheran Assemblies of God, Catholic, Baptist, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mennonite, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Nazarene, Methodist, non-denominational, and Seventh-day Adventists. They don't have any Presbyterians. Wonder why. But no, I mean, like, and not to hate on them, but they don't actually talk about any of the academics here. They talk about Christian worldview, which for some people is a huge deal, but they don't have anything that tells me who wrote it and what their credentials are for writing a history curriculum, what Jenny Phillips's credentials are for writing a grammar curriculum, and whether or not it was reviewed by a professional editor, a linguist, a educator, someone whose background is in this, to make sure she's actually teaching correct grammar and history and geography. What if she's making a mistake? How would you know? A perusal of Bookshark's website doesn't show anything about its peer review, whether or not they consulted content area experts as they were developing each of the sections, who was the developmental team for each of the sections, and whether or not they are issuing regular updates, and who they're consulting to ensure that they are providing accurate information. Now, these are 3 large companies, right? Bookshark is the sister company to Sunlight, and they are a massive seller of homeschool material. The Good and the Beautiful might be the fastest growing, kind of most generally known on the internet homeschool retailer, and the Well-Trained Mind is one of the OG presses that are out there, and none of them have any specific names for the content area experts they're consulting, for who they're using to peer review. Now, Susan Weisbauer herself has a PhD, so as the writer and the creator of a lot of that content, she herself is the content area expert. But she doesn't show, at least on the website in an easily searchable way, the kind of review process, even with the brand new, recently revised version of Ancient Times, the very first volume, that one doesn't have any specifics or easily findable specifics on its review process to make sure that it was updated correctly. We are homeschooling mother teachers. We are mother academics. We want to grow our minds as we invest in our own children. We want to be modeling for our children a meaningful engagement with academia, with research, with fact telling, right? With fact finding and the transmission of facts, of being able to tease apart our own worldview and biases as we receive information about all things, right? History and science, literature and math, like figuring out what we believe about those things and how we're teasing them apart, but also ensuring that the curriculum we're choosing is giving us honest information. I've begun to realize that there is no independent process by which we can verify that the curriculums we're purchasing are true. Now, maybe I am making a mountain out of a molehill, and if you think I am, please tell me, because it is late. I have been at work. It is going on 11 o'clock. But this and another thought has been bothering me all day. I've had these two thoughts churning in my head for the last couple of days. And one of them is that there is no independent agency that we can submit homeschool curriculum to ensure that it's actually accurate, like the facts are accurate and the conclusions are reasonable. Now, that second part, understanding that it is biased aside and knowing that that is a much harder piece to add, what if you purchased a curriculum that gave you inaccurate information and you are confidently teaching it to your child and now you're both wrong? I am not a content expert in everything. I know a lot, but I can't know everything. Off the top of my head, I don't know in what year West Virginia became a state. I know it was during the Civil War, but I can't tell you exactly which year. I don't, off the top of my head, always remember when the Constitution was written. I think it's 1787, but it could have been earlier than that. With the rise of things like ChatGPT and the rise of very simple e-commerce platforms where it only takes $100 to put up a website and an e-commerce platform and maybe $100 to register your company, you can see a homegrown, homespun curriculum content creator who's not actually reviewing their content for accuracy. And now you're trading your dollars for their content, and you can't be confident that it's correct. Now, I want to be really clear. I'm not calling out any particular content creators. Like, I'm not here to say this person or this person or this person. That's not what I'm doing at all. That's one of the reasons I chose big, well-known, well-established homeschooling companies, because they too aren't showing us their peer review process. But this is something that I feel like we as people who care about our children being well educated, we need to be asking, what's the review process for the material that I'm investing my money into? Because your labor is going towards the dollars, and the dollars you are trading for that curriculum. And if you're going to trade your dollars, your labor, for someone else's labor, you want to know that they're giving you a quality product. And I'm not just talking about a beautiful product or a well-made product. I'm talking about a well-researched and organized product. The other piece to this too is how often are we buying material that hasn't actually been tested on homeschools? Like, aside from the content creator's own children, how many content creators are just creating curriculum and throwing it out there, but they're not testing to see whether or not the creation actually is useful beyond your own family? On some level, I think that we all know that these are not rigorously tested curriculums outside of some of these bigger content providers. Again, I think Bookshark and Sunlight, because they're so big, probably have that process. I'm guessing The Good and the Beautiful had a lot of feedback about what wasn't working, and so they adapted based on customer feedback. But did they have trials of a dozen homeschool kids or 100 homeschool families using a product and then tweaking from there? Because that's what schools have to do. The public schools have to go through big, rigorous standards to change textbooks and workbooks and things like that. That's part of the reasons why they have a hard time pivoting. It's also part of the reasons why we have certain biases that are present, because textbook publishers, the biggest ones are in Texas, and Texas state schools require certain things to be in and not in textbooks. That's a different video. We can make it at a different time. But the point is, there are all these layers and steps theoretically designed to help catch mistakes and inaccuracies in the textbook publishing industry, but we don't have anything like that in the homeschool curriculum industry. Now, I read a statistic that I can't verify, although I'm going to try to. And if I can, I will link down below and put a screen here if I can verify it. But I was told recently that the homeschool curriculum, sales, like the homeschool curriculum industry, was going to be a $2 billion industry in 2026. I'm going to say that again, that the homeschool curriculum industry was projected to be a $2 billion industry. But we have almost no industry standards. Anybody can put up a website. Anybody can create a content. Anybody can sell you something. And unless you are an area expertise yourself, you will have no idea that they aren't giving you sound material. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, how do we create standards? Do we? Do we care? Is that part of the wild, wild west and the freedom of homeschooling? Is there are no standards and you just have to kind of hope for the best? Do we think that most creators are honest and aren't going to just create something and take your money, even if it's inaccurate? I've watched reviews, particularly in the foreign language department, of y'all saying that certain foreign language curriculums are just flat wrong, that they have mistakes all over the place, but they haven't been well reviewed. And you find that irritating because they were expensive programs. And so the question then becomes, who do you trust for the content that you are purchasing? Who do you trust to curate your curriculum? I'm not a content area specialist. I cannot possibly do a great job at every single content area if I were to create my own curriculum for my kids. And that's a different video I want to make. But the question remains, what do we do with knowing there's no peer review process? We have no independent board. I know that there are some things for the sciences that they could possibly get, and online accreditation does add a layer of security, but your curriculum choices, the downloadables, the textbooks, those don't require peer review. Do you want peer review? Do we want our curriculum to be written by content experts? I like Story of the World because I know that Susan Wise Bauer is a historian. She was the chair of the Classical Educators Subcommittee of the American Historical Society. She teaches at William and Mary in Virginia right now. Like, that's part of her job. She knows peer review. So even if I don't love all of the conclusions that she makes in her texts, I know that they're accurate. And I know that she knows how to research, and she writes peer-reviewed books. So I use her as an example simply because I'm familiar with her. I'm not knocking other programs, but I find that appealing. I'm a little more wary of cute name, adorableHomeschool.com and the products that Adorable Homeschool Mom is putting out. Because why would I trust her to be a content area specialist? Why would she know more than someone else? How do I know that she reviewed her content to make sure it was accurate? How do I know that she is an area of expertise, that she's giving me meaningful content and she's not creating something with AI and just selling it to make a buck? I just have been really reflecting on that, and I'm curious. I'm not here again. This is not me judging any particular person. This is me genuinely asking the question, what do we as mother educators do with that? As mother academics who care about our own intellectual resources and what we provide our children with, how do we safeguard from misinformation and inaccuracies creeping into what we teach our kids? And what do we as a homeschooling community want to do about peer review, about academic excellence? Should we? Or do we leave it the Wild Wild West? Because the whole point is you're getting out of the mainstream. I don't have an answer to these. I'm genuinely asking you. These are non-rhetorical questions. Please tell me your thoughts in the comments. And let me know if you have a process by which you vet homeschool curriculum companies. Is it something that's been established or something that's particularly large because you know that they have enough customers to call them out if things are wrong, right? I suspect big companies like Bookshark and Sunlight or The Good and the Beautiful or the Well-Trained Mind Press, they have enough people who are content area specialists using their material to teach their kids, but they would get called out pretty quickly if they had glaring, obvious mistakes. But what about some of these new companies? I don't believe they're all bad. I don't believe that all these small mom and pop shops are, blatantly trying to steal money, but I also don't trust that they're using an outside review source to ensure that they're accurate. So do we trust them? Do we go along with it? Do we potentially risk misinforming our kids and ourselves? How are you handling it? I mean, I'm genuinely curious. How are you handling it? What are you doing? What kind of standards do you look for when you choose a curriculum? Does it matter to you? And why? I really am curious. And this is a conversation I hope we start. I hope this isn't the last video we have on it, but rather the opening to an ongoing conversation about standards, review, and academic excellence in our homeschools. Okay, I need some more water. That's enough from me. Bye, y'all.